Hey, everybody. Good evening. So glad y'all could join us. Glad to have y'all. Glad to be back with you. Last week we were in the middle of trying to make some travel situations work, and we just could not uh, get tonight's lesson prepared last week. So we're bringing it to you tonight, and we're so glad you're here with us. Be sure, and y'all know me, I'm Key. Snarl will be coming up here in just a second. Want y'all to please remember to uh, tell us in the comments where you're listening to us or watching us from, and say hi. Let us know you're with us, and we do thank everybody who's um, supports us, prays for us, and comes to join us every Sunday evening. So, where's my beautiful bride? There
I'm
she
here.
is.
Mhm. I still look like I'm in the motor home, like away from you, but I'm not. I'm out back because everything is still out here. So but yeah, and we wanna thank everybody who watches this later, that watches the recorded version. You can watch with those same links we send out every week, and thank you for that too, because we have a lot of people contact us afterwards, and we know that there are people that watch this that can't join us live with it being on Sunday night. Some people actually, go to church on Sunday night or have other commitments. So anyway,
Yeah, we're thankful for all y'all as well.
okay.
Well, sweetie, you and I have uh, we've had many conversations about uh, where we are in the New Testament, uh, and I can't help but think of if you haven't seen the Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson movie, every time we dig into this subject, that's the first thing I think of is that movie, and I just can't encourage y'all enough to, if you haven't seen it, watch it. If you have seen it, watch it again. So take it away, sweet darling.
Okay, we're going to continue with what we've been studying, and we've been going kind of slow with this, but we're doing this on purpose because there are some things that we've skipped over. We feel like, we didn't get the full picture because you get a condensed version, and anytime anybody tries to talk about the arrest and crucifixion of Jesus, I mean, there's some details in here that give us a lot of insight into what was going on during these times. But tonight we're going to talk about the right to remain silent. But you will see here that that is not always the case with Jesus when he was questioned, but there is definitely, a pattern here to be explored. Again, we're going to look at the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because putting all four of those together gives us a much clearer picture of the full gospel of what happened, because different people from different perspectives, overhearing different conversations, whatever, are just things that impressed them. Being written down in their gospels gives us a fuller picture of everything that happened. So in previous podcast, and we're just going to hit this really quick, Keith, and you can help me, but we stood in the garden. We stood in the shadows, and we listened to Jesus's fervent prayers. We listened to, what he said to his disciples. We
Sweat drops of blood.
Yeah, we saw the way the disciples acted. We
Yeah.
saw that too. So that was interesting. I think I think we learned a lot in that podcast about the details of that situation. And then we're still in the Garden of Gethsemane when we see the torches, coming
Co-
toward us,
Coming
and
up the hill. Yeah.
it is a huge crowd coming to get him. It's not two or three people. Not only is it the temple guards that had been sent by the Jewish leaders, it's the Roman soldiers, the servants of the high priest, and then leading all of them is Judas, one of the 12 disciples, and he betrays Jesus with a kiss, which everything everything that we see in these particular scenarios, Jesus is in control. They come up and they ask him, he says, "Who are you looking for?" And they say, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he says, "I am he." And in the actual, did you change that, Keith, or did I?
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. Leave
There
that
you
alone.
go.
Maybe not click things.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I was trying to help myself. I didn't know it was going to do the whole thing.
Bless it. We gave you controls a while back, and nobody's taking them away from you, but
sorry.
Okay. So he says, "I am he," but in the actual text, we also studied, and I just want to bring this out again, that he really said, "I am," and all that implies. Because we went back to the God revealing himself to Moses in the burning bush, the I am, because the scripture tells us that in one of the gospels that at this point they all fell back on the ground when he said, "I am." And we studied those words and just the power of all that, and that his divinity, it's right there. We connected those dots back to places in the Old Testament. And by the time of Jesus, like I just said, the I am language carried tremendous theological weight, that connected to the identity of God himself. So if you may have done that deep dive I was talking about, where John goes in his gospel and repeatedly uses the I am, I am, I am. So we saw that. And then we saw what appears to be panic and chaos, because Peter has a sword and he draws it and cuts the ear off of one of the, I think it was the temple, one of the servants of the high priest. I think that was his position. But he cuts off, I guess, whoever was nearest him, most likely trying to take Jesus. He cut their ear off. Jesus admonishes him and tells him, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. I must drink from the cup that the Father has given me. Do you not understand that? And he actually heals the ear. But Jesus talks about, this is your hour and the power of darkness. And we talked about how darkness gets an hour, but, the kingdom gets eternity, but the disciples, we're kind of recapping really quickly here, but in fear, the disciples flee. And that's not flee as in FLEA, flee as in run, OUFT, oft. They ran oft.
RUNNOFT.
There you go. That was it. So let's see if we have any comments. I don't think nobody's telling us where they're watching from, but that's okay. So here we are in the Garden of Gethsemane. The disciples have run off. Peter and John actually follow pretty closely, as close as they can without being recognized, I guess, behind Jesus. John actually knows someone and gets into the courtyard and gets Peter in so that they are nearer Jesus. We talked about Peter. I think, here we go, the betrayal of Peter, how he was warming himself by the fire of Jesus's accusers. He was standing outside. People were saying, "Aren't you one of his disciples?" And, Jesus had predicted this. This was no surprise to Jesus at all. But Peter betrays him 3 times before the rooster crows. And that kind of gives us a good timeline, too, of, what's happening and when. And it's the late night, early hours of the morning before dawn when this is happening. And I'll never forget where we studied that passage that talks about that just as Peter denies him the 3rd time and the cock crows, that Jesus looks across and his eyes meet his, and, acknowledging the betrayal. They were that close. They were close enough for that to have happened. So we get a really good picture if we slow down and look at, the the details that are provided in all of the Gospels and put this together. But here we are now to where we wanted to get to tonight, which is the questioning of Jesus. And I think this is interesting. We all know that Jesus was questioned. But I think it's interesting, Keith. I think the questioning is interesting, and it says a lot because, number one, he's bound and taken away. This is not a friendly, you're not under arrest, we're calling you in for questioning. I mean,
we just want you to come down to the station and answer a few questions.
Well, you can imagine too, something I thought of. After you got blown back on the ground from him just saying I am, you probably were a little scared of him.
I'd say a lot. Yeah, I'd say a lot scared of him.
I think that was just a poor effort to try to contain the situation and, say we're in charge. We're in control here, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But they take him first to, and how do you say, we talked about this. There's an Ananias and then there's an Annas. This is Annas. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He is the former high priest. Caiaphas is the high priest, but he's the former high priest. Caiaphas is actually his son-in-law.
Yes, so Annas is the father-in-law of Caiaphas.
Yeah, this is a stop number one for Jesus. This is a kind of looks like to me a preliminary investigation. Not that, Caiaphas didn't know what was going on and it hadn't been run up the ladder or anything that he was coming. I just think they had these formal little procedures and protocol that they went through with anything like this. And that's pretty much what's happening here. So this is his first stop, and they ask some pretty specific questions here. He asks him about his disciples, and he asks him about his doctrine and teaching. And Jesus's response here to him is, hey, I taught every day openly in the synagogues and the temple. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was done in secret. Shouldn't witnesses be questioned instead? Because if you were really a criminal, Keith, do you think that you would stand there and tell the truth? Wouldn't you get witnesses to bring in?
Well, and
that does happen. But I'm saying Jesus is making a point here of plenty of people have seen me. Plenty of people know what I've done. You could ask anybody what I've taught. They'll tell you what I've taught. And at that point.
And the Jewish law said that an accused could not.
We're going to get to that we're going to get to that with the witnesses. I know exactly where you're going, and you're right. But one of the officers at that point is standing nearby and strikes Jesus in the face for what he considers disrespect toward the high priest. You don't talk like that to the high priest, boy, kind of thing. Slaps him. Jesus calmly responds to the man. If he spoke wrongly, what did he say wrong? Tell me what I said wrong. But if I spoke truthfully, why are you hitting me? Why are you hitting me? So even now under arrest, Jesus remains composed, fearless, and morally authoritative. Right here. This is in his control. And what is this hearing about? This hearing is about control. It's about religious influence, and it's about protecting their institutional authority.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is about. But there's no other way to look at it, especially even the questions that they ask. The next thing they do, stop number 2, they're going to take him to see Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin. But all three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all give an account of this part. Jesus is brought before Caiaphas and the members of the Sanhedrin. And this is kind of the formal Jewish religious, I'm calling it religious interrogation. This is where you're about to talk about the false witnesses are brought in. That the charges begin as religious transgressions, I would call it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense to call it that?
Yeah, and they had to have 2 witnesses that would tell the same testimony before they would be considered to be telling the truth.
Right. So when they get in there, they accuse him of what? Threatening the temple. Remember, because Jesus said, tear down this temple and in 3 days I will raise it. So, well, that gets all turned around. Different witnesses tell different things. One says, no, he didn't say he was going to tear it down. He said he was going to rebuild it. And then the other one says, yeah, he said it was going to tear it down. So none of their testimony, agreed. So that wasn't really in a court of law. That particular evidence that got put on, they had character witness. What is it called? Impeachment of character of a witness.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't reliable.
Yeah,
so
they impeached each other's testimony because he couldn't tell the same lie.
Yeah, but he's also accused of speaking against sacred things and blasphemy. Now, of course, we just talked about in Mark, it tells us the witnesses cannot agree, for many bore false witness against him, but their testimonies did not agree. Nobody's story was the same. So the people that they brought in weren't telling the truth, basically, anyway. So, how was he a threat, really? I mean, because they were the interpreters of the law. Only they. And how many times, Keith, did you hear Jesus say, but I say unto you? And it never was, if you look back, though, it never was trying to usurp anybody's interpretation. It was always usually adding to the interpretation. It was going further, going the step further, it seemed like to me. But in any case, they didn't like that at all.
You remember toward the end of his ministry, he did start directing several spears directly at the Pharisees and Sadducees.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't letting them get away with it.
I don't know, though, that he ever really attacked. He may have attacked their interpretation in some ways, as in like giving alms or something like that, cleaning the outside of a cup, and not having it clean on the inside. He may have, done some of that. So that's a good point. But their status was very important to them. It was like, if it was today,
especially to the Sadducees.
Yeah,
Pharisees were like that, but not quite so bad.
The best seats in the restaurants.
Yeah.
If there was such a thing, I'm saying, just all the perks that came with being in the Sanhedrin, and then their religious economy. The economy.
I was going to say the economy.
Did I say economy?
You first time.
I'm sorry. The economy. Because this was money to them. This was wealth. Yeah. This was, he was messing with that. Their public honor, because they considered themselves, honorable, and
they were the children of Moses.
And Jesus, just like you just said, did come against them and so called them a brood of vipers, things like that. So the core questions that they basically asked here were, by what authority do you do these things? What did you teach? Did you say you would destroy the temple? Are you the Christ? The interesting thing is he answers. This is not a time when Jesus is silent. He says he is. And he says, you will see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. And I get into a deep dive about this a little bit later, but that's Psalm 110, Daniel 7. He's hitting them with prophecy, that he is fulfilling that prophecy.
Yes. And there were some of the extra biblical books that made wide use of the term Son of Man. Son of Man was a very, very highly revered phrase, and it definitely had serious religious connotations to say Son of Man, and Jesus did use that in referring to himself. So that really offended him.
Yeah, huge implications, right? divine authority. By whose authority do you do these things? Divine authority. That he has divine authority. That he has heavenly throne, messianic kingship, judgment authority. That would be the things that if he says he is the Messiah, this is what it is. And guess what happens? The high priest just tears his robes. It's supposed to be in, protest of, the horror of blasphemy. He has spoken blasphemy. That's what they wanted. That's all they needed to hear, because then they feel like we got you. Only problem is, they can't legally execute Jesus under Roman occupation. They would have stoned him, but they can't. So what do they have to do? They got to do the flip. The major shift here. The accusation changes altogether. This is before the Jews. When he stands before the Jews, he's called a blasphemer. And guess what? When he gets to Rome, guess what he's going to be? A political revolutionary. Because that would be something that would get the attention of Rome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Pontius Pilate, he does not care anything about Jewish theology. He could care less. He cares about Rome, stability. He doesn't want any revolts. He wants to keep Caesar happy. He cares about crowd control because he's wanting peace, and he doesn't want any political uprisings. He is trying to make his life as simple as possible. He don't want anything getting back to Caesar, that he doesn't have things under control over there with the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he did, if it causes any problems for Caesar, he's probably out.
Oh yeah.
So his questions that Pilate asks, and this is not asking Jesus necessarily, he asks the Jewish leaders, what accusation do you bring? Like, what's this man done? And he wants an actual crime. And they pivot right here, big time. They say, he misleads the nation. He forbids taxes to Caesar. He claims to be a king. So you're looking at sedition. So, but notice how they just changed the framing altogether. Not one time does anybody say, oh, well, he's a blasphemer. Nobody says that when they bring him before Pilate.
Nope.
That was the thing they hung him on. But now they've had to switch everything. Are you king of the Jews? This is Rome's central concern. They don't want theology, blasphemy, temple disputes. They could care less about that stuff. But kingship, rival authority, sedition, all that would be something they would be interested in. So Jesus's response here is, my kingdom is not of this world. In other words, I'm not in competition for anything Rome is, in charge of. Jesus does not deny kingship, but he reframes it. And Pilate realizes Jesus is not leading a military revolt. Now, he's not like any political adversary. So Pilate's struggle here. I find no fault in him. He sees no insurrection, no military threat, no political crime. But what does he fear? He fears crowd unrest because these people are stirred up. Caesar's displeasure if he starts making a problem over here, and political backlash, to him. So he becomes trapped, basically. I mean, if he does or if he doesn't, he's on the wrong side. So he's going to find a loophole. We know about loopholes. Pilate sends Jesus to Herod Antipas because Jesus is Galilean. So he's thinking he can just pawn him off on Herod. But
Herod Antipas.
Let's remember which Herod this was. This is the Herod that beheaded John the Baptist. This is that Herod. He is the son of Herod the Great. So when you think about, remember how upset Jesus was that John was beheaded. Now he's fixing to go over there and stand in front of this fool. And what does Herod want? Because he is an idiot. He wants entertainment and he wants to see miracles. Do a miracle. Jesus here remains mostly silent, as he does with Pilate. But Herod mocks him and sends him back. He sends him back to Pilate. It's no entertainment in this for him. So you see the contrast, though, here that I'm trying to make with the Jews. Who do you claim to be is what they want to know, and that's the blasphemy. And then Rome is, are you a threat to Rome? It's two totally different things, two totally different lines of questioning. Religion accused him of blasphemy. Politics accused him of rebellion, but neither could find actual guilt in him. The truth is the truth. I want to ask, I had some questions I wanted to ask here. What did the disciples likely expect would happen next after Jesus was arrested? Conflict, execution? I mean, what were they thinking? Because look at what Jesus has already done, okay? They're going off of past experience. Jesus cleansed the temple. Remember how he went in and turned over the money changers' tables and made people get out of the Gentile court and stop selling stuff and making it a marketplace. And then he's definitely, as we just talked about, publicly denounced the Pharisees and called them a brood of vipers. On and on and on. He's drawn enormous crowds. I mean, he just entered Jerusalem like a king with them shouting, Hosanna.
Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna. That was an Old
Yeah.
Testament proclamation of kingship.
Mm-hmm. So they still expected a kingdom, I think. I mean, we can only suppose, but we have to go off of what we know. Arrest, questioning, public dispute, temporary detention, maybe even beating or imprisonment, but I don't think they expected execution.
Well, even though he told them, they
Yeah.
probably weren't because again, some of them had in the back of their mind, oh boy, you just wait. You just wait. When he gets a belly full of these folks, he's fixing to really let them know who he is, what he's fixing to do.
Exactly. That's my point. And even near the end, I mean, the disciples still appear to expect a visible kingdom, restoration of Israel, Messiah's victory, because at the Last Supper, Keith, they were still arguing about it.
Mm-hmm.
They were still saying, who's the greatest?
That was less than 24 hours before this time period.
I mean, they're still thinking, I think, in kingdom terms, and Jesus tells them he's going to suffer. They don't seem to be able to grasp this. They don't seem to be understand that he could him losing, being humiliated, dying under Rome. I just don't think they think that. I mean, Peter's sword alone, he's prepared for resistance, defense, a confrontation of some type, not surrender. And then Jesus says, put your sword away. I mean, that must have been just blown him away.
Yeah, their heads are spinning right now.
Mm-hmm. And what about divine intervention? I mean, Jesus had raised the dead. He had calmed the storms, walked on water, escaped hostile crowds before. Remember when he just walked through when they were trying to seize him? And in the garden, he says he could call 12 legions of angels. You got to, if I'm a disciple, I'm sitting there thinking, was that a clue? Is that what he's going to do? Is that how it's going to turn out? I mean, they've got to have believed that somehow God was going to intervene in all this. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah. That was their expectation. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a few possibilities. You know how I like to paint a picture. But these are little scenarios that I kind of came up with. That it was going to be something like Elijah and the prophets. Remember where the prophets of Baal went around and tried to do all their little incantations and light the fire and this and that and the other. And Elijah went over there and poured water on his, and fire came down from heaven and it blasted everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Moses versus Pharaoh. That's supernatural. Just divine vindication, miraculous deliverance. That had to be something that they thought, could be a possibility. Also, they could have thought that, like earlier when they tried to, seize him. Remember, I was talking about the crowds and him walking through the crowds and he walked away. They could have thought that he was just going to be released. That this was just one step in the whole thing, that this was what was going to happen. They also could have thought that there was going to be a big uprising, that Jesus would finally reveal power openly, that, even that the crowds might join in, and this is the beginning of the revolution. This is the beginning of, his reign. I mean,
yeah, but you remember the disciples were asleep when Jesus prayed his prayer. If there's any way, Lord, please let this cup pass from me.
He did.
But in
they
the
were
end,
asleep, but they weren't so asleep that they didn't hear it and report it. They knew that he had prayed that. They just didn't understand the cup. And he told them they were going to suffer. They just don't.
That's true.
They just don't
That's
get
true.
it. This, I'm sorry, some of this is messed up. I don't know why it did that, but the disciple, why they flee. I don't think the arrest itself was the shock, because they had to be expecting something like that, really. I think that the real shock was probably that Jesus surrendered willingly. That had to be just, put the sword away, Peter. I'm going with them. That had to be the real shock. And he didn't resist. He didn't call the angels, rally the crowds. He wasn't going to overthrow Rome, it didn't look like. Instead, he submitted. He was going to drink that cup. He was going to drink that cup. Just their expectations, just to say it again, I think they expected danger. They realized they were in a dangerous situation, but I don't think they expected surrender. They expected him to confront. I don't think they expected that he would just go willingly like that and act like he's in control of this situation. But there are so many prophecies that are fulfilled in just this small amount of time. Every slap, every false witness, every accusation. These are all prophecies. A moment of silence. None of this is random. The suffering of Christ was not chaos. I called it chaos before, but it's not chaos unfolding. It's prophecy unfolding. And if somebody wants to do a deep dive, I know it would take forever for us to do this, so I'm not going to do that now. Maybe one day we'll do a whole segment on prophecy fulfilled. But just these 11 right here, these are prophecies that are fulfilled from the Judas's kiss on, like betrayed by a close companion. That's Psalms 41:9. People can go and pause this, take a picture, go and look these up. 30 pieces of silver. Remember the potter. Zechariah 11:12-13. If strike the shepherd, scatter the sheep. That's Zechariah 13:7. Silent before his accusers. That's in Isaiah 53. Right there. You have just been studying that not too long ago, or earlier today we were talking about it. False witnesses rising against him. Psalms 27 and in 35. Hated without cause. Psalm 69. Numbered with the transgressors. There again. That's that Isaiah 53. Struck and mocked. Micah 5:1 and Isaiah 50 verse 6. The rejected stone. That's in Psalms 118. The Son of Man coming on the clouds. Daniel 7:13-14. The suffering servant stands alone. Isaiah 63. All of those right there. Just in this little short amount of time, this little interrogation, those prophecies were all fulfilled, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
That's something. So next week we'll kind of get to the verdict. We will talk about when he goes back to Pontius Pilate, how that all comes about. So I know that you had some things you were working on for Creation Corner. Did you want to say
Yes.
anything else about the Bible study before that? Sorry.
Yeah, I will. I want to remind everybody. We've said this before. There were three major religious groups: the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and let's just call them support staff. That would be the scribes and the teachers. Okay, but the third major group that is not mentioned in the Bible are the Essenes, Essenes. They are the ones that had gotten so fed up. Well, first of all, they didn't even consider the Sadducees as even worthy of them giving them the time of day. And the Pharisees, they thought they had sold out. They had basically sold their souls to the devil so bad that they were nothing but Roman puppets and puppets to King Herod. And so the Essenes basically withdrew themselves from Jewish society. And it's the Essenes, and again, it's Essenes, that were in a self-contained, it's like, let's think of it like a monastery, but they were in a self-contained basically city at the northwest side of the Dead Sea, and then they also had one up toward the Sea of Galilee. Okay, and so those were the three major groups. By the time Jesus came along, they had already withdrawn themselves from Jewish society, and so that's why they're not mentioned in the Bible. But we're thankful for them, because they did leave a record of who they were. They did leave records of what they thought, what they believed. They did practice immersion for baptism, ritual washing. There were definitely wash tubs, full length for grown people to get completely into the water. These had been found in the ruins of the city of Qumran at the north end of the Dead Sea, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. There's tons and tons of parts of the Dead Sea Scrolls where they literally talked about who they were and what they were doing and what they believed about the Sadducees and Pharisees. And it just so happens that where the disciples, and that's why you can understand why the disciples were going in 8 different directions. And that's because the majority of Jewish culture at the time, they were wanting a military commander. But the Essenes, believe it or not, they understood there were to be 2 Messiah appearances. And the first one would be the suffering servant. They were not expecting a military agent to come in the form of the Messiah. And one other thing I did want to mention is, Jesus teaching in the temple and they taking him when he would talk about I and my Father are one, and finally made it clear, yeah, I'm the Messiah. I'm the expected Messiah. Well, you got to remember that in Genesis chapter 49, when Joseph blessed these sons, not Joseph, Abraham, Isaac, and
Jacob.
When Jacob blessed the tribes, and Joseph was there, and he had his two sons, Jacob,
Manasseh and Ephraim.
Yeah. Well, Jacob said of the tribe of Judah, and this is in Genesis chapter 49. He said the scepter would not be taken from Judah until after the Messiah had come. Mm-hmm. Well, the scepter, it's like a royal uh, stick
Staff, but
staff.
it's shorter. Yeah.
Yeah. And what that was the symbol of absolute kingdom authority, including the ability to have you killed if you don't do exactly like I want you to, or if I find that you've broken the laws or whatever. Well, in 7 AD, the Roman government issued the edict that Israel could no longer put people to death.
Yeah.
In 7 AD.
So what you're saying is, in some ways, that is the royal scepter passing from them, which is the ultimate authority is passed from them. Now Rome has it. So they tried to say, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of you. I get excited.
Well, I'm just bringing up the point that this was the time of the Messiah.
But they didn't know that because
they didn't
thought,
know that. But
hey, Messiah hadn't come. That can't be right.
They had
he
the
was
book.
Born. He was come. He was born.
They had Genesis 49. They had Daniel. They had Isaiah 53. They had Psalm 22. But it was absolutely, and again, it's a case of there were two Pharisees who were receptive to the notion that Jesus could be the Messiah. All the others were more worried about their power, their esteem, their status in the community. That meant everything to them. And they could not bring themselves to think, what if he is the Messiah? They couldn't do it.
Right.
Couldn't do it. And so when you look at the history and the prophecies in the Bible, including going all the way back to Genesis chapter 49, and the fact that all of this is documented, we're not just throwing something out there. In 7 AD, there was a rulership changed in the Roman government that was overseeing the land of it where Israel was occupied, the Holy Land. And they said Israel no longer has the right to execute anybody.
Which is why they couldn't execute Jesus for blasphemy. They had to go to Rome. They had to flip the switch on him and make it look like he was a political subversive for them to be able to get rid of him.
Yeah.
They had to trump up something that was going to make Rome want to take action against it. And they had been made ineffective. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the last thing I want to say about that, just to put a bow on it. This is all well documented. The Jewish rabbinical writings of the time clearly talk about them putting on sackcloth and ashes, pouring ashes on their head, and they would go through Jerusalem just wailing and crying, and because
moaning
in their minds,
mourning and fasting.
Yeah, because in their minds, God had broken his promise to Israel.
Yeah,
because the scepter had been taken away from them. The scepter, being representative of absolute power to control,
to
rule, had been taken away from them, but the Messiah had not come.
Right.
When in fact,
the Messiah had come.
There was a 7-year-old boy up in Nazareth learning how to be a woodworker or stonemason or whatever.
Yep.
So.
Yep. That's interesting. So much prophecy in just that little bit right there,
And it's so well documented.
Well, not only is it well documented from a biblical standpoint, as far as I think what you're saying is just extra biblical things outside the Bible documented all these happenings and just the timelines and all that.
That's exactly the point I'm making. It's just so well documented in the historical record. And so none of this is taught. None of this is explained in Sunday school classes. And,
but we definitely need to slow down and question things and say, what does that mean? What would have that looked like? How would that have played out? But I don't want you to run out of time.
Okay.
You didn't give me any videos or anything to show tonight, did you? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Can you put our normal thing back up there?
Our normal thing.
There we go. I did it. Okay.
Okay. Nothing changed. What normal thing were you trying to put up?
It did to me.
What
That's
were
what I
you,
messed up. That's what I messed up a while ago. Is what
okay.
I was looking at.
Okay,
Uh,
I'm gonna play your intro.
uh, hey y'all! I promised y'all last time I was going to do a special creation corner on dinosaurs. And folks, let's get started. Let's see. I always try to start with two verses uh, just to remind us that God created all this. I'm going to go back to Isaiah 42. This is what God the Lord says, the creator of the heavens, who stretched them out, who spreads out the earth with all that springs from it, who gives breath to its people and life to those who walk on it. Isaiah 42:5. And then Psalms 95, in his hand are the deep places of the earth. The heights of the hills are his also. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Well, that's all part of what we're going to cover, make points about tonight. Now, man and dinosaur. And y'all know the conventional wisdom, according to the secular world. Man is a very, very recent creature on the face of the earth. When I was a kid, modern man was only about 60,000 years old. And that's assuming that Neanderthal man was a modern man, Cro-Magnon. That's what we supposedly are, Cro-Magnon. And before Cro-Magnon was Neanderthals, and they dated back to about 60, 70,000 years back in history. And then before that, it was just some hominids, as they were called.
So
Uh,
be careful. People may not know you're being sarcastic.
oh no, I said this is secular.
Okay.
This is what the secular world has taught us. Okay,
Right. Right.
well,
Has
recent
claimed.
is claimed, yeah.
Okay.
Recently, they're now saying that modern man maybe can be dated back to about 300,000 years ago. Okay, still doesn't come anywhere close to what the Bible says. But the whole reason I'm bringing that up is because dinosaurs are supposed to have died out, become extinct. No more dinosaurs after 65 million years ago. So that's a big gap. So you got 65 million on back into history, back to about 250 to 300, maybe even 400 million years ago was the age of the dinosaurs. And the age of the dinosaurs ended, and remember, in ancient times, it's counting down. You had BC and AD. So it's counting down from about 450 million years to 65 million years. So 65 million years is when all the dinosaurs were supposed to have died out. And there's, a couple of theories as to what caused that. But do we all agree that means there was a gap from 65 million years ago? And sticking to their story, what the secular world says today is 300,000 years. That's an insurmountable gap. But let's do a little studying. The word dinosaur did not even exist prior to 1842 when a British paleontologist created the word. And basically, it was, obviously he was trained in Western colleges and universities, trained under Western scientists. And he wanted to go back to ancient Greek and just say, okay, dienos is terrible and Soros is lizard. So let's put those together and say dinosaur, terrible lizard. And that was
Terrible
his,
lizard.
yeah. terrible lizard, thunder lizard, something to that effect. Uh, and it was to just basically be this group of beings that existed sometime in the past, because you got to remember, nobody alive now can claim they were alive when all those big bones got dug up. But that's what that was to describe a group of large extinct reptiles from a Western cultural perspective. Even though as long ago as 265 AD, there are written records of the exact same types of bones being dug up and examined in China. But they didn't call them dinosaurs, because that, like I said, that was a term created out of whole cloth. They called them dragons, and the term dragons is the more heavily used term through history until the 1800s. Okay. Now let's see what the Bible says, and I put dinosaur in quotes here. There's this thing called Leviathan, and this Leviathan is, a lot of people, say, well, it's only mentioned in Job, and it's mysterious, and it's symbolic. It's not real. But actually, the Bible mentions Leviathan in about 5 or 6 places. The first one is Job 3. Second one is Psalm 74. And Leviathan, in some minds, represents a terrible creature that lived on water, or lived in the water, and possibly on the land. And that's because of all the references to Leviathan. And there they are: Psalm 74, Psalm 104. Here we go. All right. Covered that. Oh, Isaiah 27. That's right. In that day, the Lord with his severe sword, great and strong, will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the twisted serpent, and he will slay the reptile that is in the sea.
I was just thinking, well, maybe Leviathan was a whale, but then when he said that, the serpent in the sea, that's the reptile in the sea. That's different.
Well, and those are very short references. The best reference for Leviathan, for understanding many, many attributes and characteristics of a Leviathan, is actually found in Job chapter 41. And here's, but because I had to try to get the verses in there, I had to let me read it to you from somewhere where I can see it good enough.
Are you talking about the 17 verses? Do you want me to read that?
Well, it's too small for me to read on my...
I can read it if you want me to read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can you draw out Leviathan with a hook, or snare his tongue with a line which you lower? Can you put a reed through his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many supplications to you? Will he speak softly to you? Will he make a covenant with you? Will you take him as a servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird? Or will you leash him for your maidens? Will your companions make a banquet of him? Will they apportion him among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? Lay your hand on him. Remember the battle. Never do it again. Interesting.
Pretty bad dude.
Okay, so indeed, any hope of overcoming him is false. Shall one not be overwhelmed at the sight of him? No one is so fierce that he would dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand against me? Who has preceded me, that I should pay him? Everything under heaven is mine. I will not conceal his limbs, his mighty power, or his graceful proportions. Who can remove his outer coat?
In other words, who can skin him?
Makes it seem like dragon-like, yeah. So who can approach him with a double bridle, That must have been just a big bridle that they used for mules and stuff. Who can open the doors of his face with his terrible teeth all around? His rows of scales, small shields.
That's what the Hebrew word literally means, the
Yeah.
small shields.
His row of scales or small shields are his pride. Doesn't this sound like a dragon?
Well, the
Shut
scale,
up tightly as with a seal, tightly sealed together. One is so near another that no air can come between them. They are joined.
he's
one
got
to another.
scales like a snake.
Yeah, they stick together and cannot be parted.
That's why he said it was a reptile. Go
Wow.
ahead.
I read the whole thing. They are joined to one another. They stick together and cannot be parted.
Okay.
Wow. Oh, more. His sneezings or snortings.
Well, the Hebrew word there literally does mean sneezings or snortings.
Flash forth light. Does this sound like he's breathing fire? And his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning lights, burning torches. Sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke goes out of his nostrils as from a boiling pot and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals. In other words, he could breathe on your barbecue grill and light it. A flame goes out of his mouth.
All right, stop right there.
Okay.
We have studied the bombardier beetle. The bombardier beetle is a real insect.
Mm-hmm.
When we studied the bombardier beetle, I made the point of if God could make this bug appear to have blown its behind up with an explosion with
burning acid
with burning acid that would peel your skin off, heat it to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, could he not have created some type of a dinosaur at the time that had similar characteristics? The bombardier beetle says it's quite possible. So you don't discount what you just read just because you're saying, well, that's impossible. No, we already know that's not impossible. We just hadn't found that booger yet. Go ahead.
Strength dwells in his neck, and sorrow dances before him. In other words, dismay goes before him. Like, I'm assuming that means people see him and they're like, what in the world?
Oh, yeah. Don't.
The folds of his flesh are joined together. They are firm on him and cannot be moved. His heart is as hard as stone, even as hard as the lower millstone. Ooh, you know about the lower millstone. It has to be.
Lower millstone is not the one that moves. It's so heavy, it stays there. It's the upper millstone that does the grinding. Yep.
When he raises himself up, the mighty are afraid because of his crashings or thrashings. They are beside themselves, faint-hearted. Though the sword reaches him, it cannot avail, nor does spear, dart, or javelin. He regards iron as straw and bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones become like stubble to him. Darts are regarded as straw. He laughs at the threat of javelins. His undersides are like sharp pot shards. He spreads pointed marks in the mire. His footprints?
No, what it means when he's moving through the mud at low tide, he makes his body is shaped so that it leaves marks.
Okay. He makes the deep boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. He leaves a shining wake behind him. One would think the deep had white hair.
That's how big he is moving through the water. He leaves a big wake.
White hair like a wave. like a wave, like you see waves, a white wave. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, if you've been
Okay.
on a cruise ship, you've leaned out your over your balcony or over the railing and watch the boat create white top waves.
If you're from Mississippi and went water skiing when you were a kid, they said it's white capping out there. I don't know if they
Yeah,
say that anywhere else. Okay.
yeah,
Um, it says he on earth there's nothing like him, which is made without fear. He beholds every high thing. He is king over all the children of pride.
yeah.
I don't know
Now
what that means.
that's not critical to what we're trying to do. There is one line that was left out when I tried to copy it and make my slide, and it says that its tail sways like a cedar. The sinews of its thighs are close knit. That's how big his tail is like a
Cedar
big
tree.
thick cedar tree. Yeah,
Wow.
that's
Wow.
that's Job 41. Now, if that does not describe the bones that have been dug up, that have been put in museums uh, all around the world, but here's what I want to talk about. And we've said this before, you either have a biblical worldview or you have a secular worldview. You have a biblical worldview or you have a man-driven worldview. This is Dr. Carl Sagan, and he concedes that the pervasiveness of dragon myths in the folk legends of many cultures is probably no accident. It is a worldwide phenomenon. And he said this. Everybody knows who Carl Sagan is. He said this in 1977 in his book, The Dragons of Eden. But now, what you need to understand is he goes on to explain how the pervasiveness of dragon myths all around the world, just like the tales of giants and just like the tales of the worldwide flood, he lays it off to memories from our non-human ancestors from millions and billions and millions of years ago, that the memory of these animals have been preserved and passed down through our DNA. Now, can you believe that?
He almost got I don't know.
It is so absurd, it's embarrassing to repeat it. But
Yeah.
that's literally what he said. He conceded, just like the worldwide flood phenomenon, the evidence of giants all around the world phenomenon, that evidence of dinosaurs being recognized by now living groups of humans is a worldwide phenomenon.
Are you going to be able to? I know we're running up on an hour now, but I know you've done some real good research into archaeology and DNA and things like that. And
well, I've covered that in other ones. I'm taking a different approach tonight.
Okay.
But here's what.
But I mean, just to say that, there's, if you want to use science, you can use science to say that's crazy.
Well, that's the problem. Science, the truthful science would say what he said to start with is right, but then how he explained it, there's no scientific possibility. That's correct.
That's where they mess up, trying to prop up that part that's erroneous about, the earth. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Did y'all know that in 1973, the World Book Encyclopedia, y'all know an encyclopedia is just a compilation of what a lot of very smart people wrote as articles. Well, there was I believe his name is Kenneth Wilson. He wrote the article in the 1973 World Book Encyclopedia on what a dragon was. And he said the dragons of legend are strangely like actual creatures that have lived in the past, conceding that the dragons of legend, of all the evidence of dragons, and I'm going to show you some, all the evidence of dragons, and I put that in quotes because that's what they're implying, are strangely like actual creatures that have lived in the past. They are much like the great reptiles which inhabited the earth long before man is supposed to have appeared on earth. There's that, give with one hand and take back with the other.
I know.
Okay. Louis Jacobs, PhD. Now, this guy is like a world-renowned paleontologist, okay? And he wrote a book called Quest for African Dinosaurs in 2000, and this is what he said. Such an association would dispel an earth with vast antiquity. The entire history of creation, including the day of rest, could be accommodated in the 7 biblical days of the Genesis myth. Evolution would be vanquished if it had to be conceded that mankind lived with dinosaurs. That's what he said.
Evolution will be vanquished.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Well, let's vanquish it. Go.
Let's see. How about that? That is St. George. That's one of the depictions. This is a tapestry. Folks, this is not AI. You're not looking at AI here. These are real tapestries, painted tapestries from the Middle Ages. And look what they depict.
Which, I mean, you could say they were fantasy.
You could.
You could say.
You could.
That they were,
in a vacuum, you could.
Like fairy tales. Yeah.
In a vacuum, you could.
Sure.
But when you see depictions of dogs, cats, monkeys, bears, and dragons, what's the dragon even doing there?
Yeah, it's out of place unless it was commonplace. Yeah.
And how would they know what they look like? And it's very important as I'm fixing to show you. Okay. This is from Egypt. What does that look like? Looks like those big-bodied, long-necked dinosaurs. A 7-year-old second grader in any school system in this country would say those are dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And he would say, well, that's either a brontosaurus or a brontosaurus or
Rexaurus.
Whatever. But look at them. Readily recognizable. Y'all, these are thousands of years old. This wasn't done as a vacation Bible school project. This is thousands of years old. I'm not through. All right, I'm going to show you this. There's a church in England where the floor was
I've seen this, yeah.
Of a tomb for a cardinal or a bishop, I don't remember which. I believe in the Anglican Church. This brass was carved when it was inlaid in the floor. Well, you can see there's a bat, fish, dog, bird, and then you have this.
Dinosaur. That's one of those things where you say, I mean, why would they just have one mythical creature and the rest are?
But look how real they look. That looks like something else should be that you'd find in the Metropolitan Museum of Natural History in New York City or Smithsonian. Mm-hmm. That's a brontosaurus. That's one of the big-bodied plant-eating with the long
Is that
necks.
a picture of the church where they are right there?
That is the picture of the church. Now, you see how worn it is? Well, they quit letting people walk on top of the tomb. It used to, you could just literally walk out there and look between your feet and see all this. Mm-hmm. Well, they've stopped that for this very reason. It's because it's so.
Well, it's a soft metal too.
Yeah, they were getting so worn.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not through. Look at this. I wish we could zoom in. Okay, this is the two sides of. I can't remember what that is, but look down here. Look right here. Look right there. What do you see?
We don't know where you're saying right there. Your cursor didn't show up.
See that thing? It looks like a circle on the one on the right.
Yeah, the necks are intertwined.
The
Yeah,
necks are intertwined, just like the other two.
it does look like a. Yeah.
And look at the bodies and the long tails and the necks.
So you've got depictions of somebody killing somebody. I wish I could read what all this is to
Yeah, that's
kinda,
one side.
but it
But
definitely looks like in that particular picture that these particular creatures have got trainers or people that are trying to handle them with some type of collar or leash, which is kind of interesting.
what is that doing there?
I mean, it's not like they just put them in there. They actually put them in there alongside human figures that were taming them, if you
Yeah.
will.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
interesting.
through. All right. Here are all three of those objects,
Let me zero in
and,
again.
and they've been artificially highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the crooked necks.
I wonder what that's about. Why is that? Why is that a
Egypt,
thing?
England, and Mesopotamia.
Mm-hmm.
Egypt, England, Mesopotamia. Hundreds of years apart in time, if not thousands of years apart in time.
Mm.
You may ask the question, what is this intertwining necks about?
That is what I was wondering.
Well, there you go. We have
Yeah.
an animal alive today that does that very same thing.
When they fight, yeah.
When they fight, this is what they do.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Okay, there you go. Separated by thousands of miles, completely different people groups, and several hundred, if not thousands of years in time. All three of those. Can you
Yeah,
believe that?
that's interesting.
Tell me why. Tell me
Don't
how
know.
that could have happened. By what? Okay. Here's one we've mentioned before. This is at the the palace complex at Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Is there anybody who does not recognize what that dinosaur is from your elementary school days when you first learned about that? It's one of the first ones you learn about. It's called a stegosaurus.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing missing in this particular frame is the spiked tail.
Well, he's got a little thing right there.
Yeah, it's got something.
Spike.
But look what's on the back.
Mm-hmm.
That is as stegosaurus as stegosaurus can be. And again, this is a situation where there are animal depictions: monkeys, dogs, cats, bears, leopards, lizards.
And then they just threw in a mythical creature.
Anything to in a mythical creature.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense, does it?
Doesn't make a bit of sense.
You got some more pictures we got to get through. We got 15 minutes over.
Okay, sorry.
That's
Then
okay.
you got the Chinese zodiac. Chinese zodiac dating back thousands of years. Every animal that we know of that we're familiar with today is
Still
included
there.
in the Chinese zodiac.
Except the dragon.
And there's the dragon. Why is the dragon supposedly?
Yeah, why didn't they pick a
mythical
bombardier beetle to put in there? You know, I mean, there you go.
All right. This is a drawing, a North American petroglyph under the Kakina Bridge at Natural Bridges National Monument, Utah. Look at that.
How about that?
What creature is that? Just like several of the ones we've already seen. This is a Mayan depiction of a dragon. Look at those teeth. Look at the size of these humans.
Very reptilian, yeah.
Very reptilian. And he's as large or larger than the humans.
Yes.
Now, how did they know to draw that? How did they know to draw that? All right. What about this? This is at a excuse me, a chateau near Paris, France. Can you zoom in?
Not very much. It's not really enough.
That's
Yeah.
okay. Look, scaly skin. And folks, there's not one of these in this particular chateau. There are over 300 depictions of a creature like this. Some of them better than others. Okay? Breathing fire, spines, pointed spine, and scaly skin. This is going to get you. This is a depiction of St. George. This statue is quite a number of hundreds of years old in Germany. This is a faraway picture. I'm going to give you a close-up. Look at the close-up.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the mouth. Look at the way that creature is drawn. Not a heavy creature. Pretty thin-bodied, long, thin tail. But look
Like
at that
a lizard.
But look at that head. Look at that overbite. The overbite. How did you 600 years ago, how did you know how did the sculptor know to make a creature that had that overbite? Well, folks, guess what? There is a real creature called the Proterosuchus, and that's what that's the artist depiction on the right, and that's his skull right there. Now, tell me how 500 or 600 years ago the sculptor knew how to make that head that way. That's because he had actually seen a real thing.
Yep. I would say that's a very good likely. It's very likely.
How would he have known to make that thing look like that? If it was just a myth and he had seen the quote unquote dragons from China, why didn't he make a statue that made a dragon a creature that looked like them?
Yep.
This is any paleontologist would know what that creature is right there.
For sure. What about this one?
All right, this dates from 1505 AD. And this shows a Roman general. Now, this is a tapestry. This is a drawing of a tapestry that was in Germany that was created in 1505. I believe was published in 1505 AD. And look at it. Something spewing out of its mouth. It's got a ridged back, long tail, clawed feet, and big sharp teeth. That ain't a crocodile.
I don't think so.
So I just wanted to finish up. There's the Delk.
That's the one with the footprint and the
dinosaur print that came over on
top of the human print. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's how I want to finish up. And I know we ran long. There are some more there's some more footprints that were uncovered not too long ago in the Paluxy River in that area. It's not in the park, but it's in that area. And there is a question. There were more dinosaur tracks found. And then there's a question with, there's a smaller set of prints. And some people were trying to say they were human prints. Some people, even the Genesis, the Creation Museum doesn't claim that they're human footprints. So I'm just telling you, don't go chasing after just anything. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I told y'all last time, this particular rock specimen right here has been examined. It's been x-rayed. It's been examined every way you possibly can, and nobody can prove it is a hoax. Okay.
There are hoaxes out there as well.
There are hoaxes out there. And then I want to finish up with this. Just to remind everybody, the Texas Creation Museum is at Glen Rose, Texas. If you haven't been, you need to go. If you haven't been, you need to go. And there's the map. It's right off of Highway 67. And the museum is on the way before you can get to the Dinosaur Valley State Park, you will pass the museum. So don't miss it.
I put the address on there, Keith, right there.
Yep. There's
the address.
I strongly encourage, if you hadn't been, go. We hadn't been in a long time, so we're probably going to plan another trip. Plus, see what else has been uncovered at the park.
Yeah, so, that's true, because they find new things all the time. We ran over. We're sorry. We love everybody.
I hope y'all thought this was interesting. I thought it's dismissed. It's dismissed out of hand because, and here's how I'm going to finish up. The lady who first found soft tissue in dinosaur fossils of a T-Rex, she had it examined by her staff 17 times, and they came back every time saying, Professor, we're sorry, but it's still soft tissue. And she finally had to admit it was soft tissue, but it was found in a fossil that was 75 million years old. That's how she wrote it up. Folks, it's a battle out there. It's a battle out there for truth. And don't just take it hook, line, and sinker. Challenge it, question it. We're doing the best we can. There's all kind of resources out there to give you all kind of information about young Earth, 6 days of creation. Go ahead, sweetie, take us away.
Well, do what we tell you to do every time we give you anything. Do your research. Have the Berean spirit. Go look up these scriptures. See for yourself if what we say is true. Don't take our word for it. How about that, honey?
That's exactly right. Thank y'all. We love y'all. Sorry we went so far over.
Okay. See you next time.